Good day all. Today we come to the second lesson on questions where I teach you the WH questions, how to ask a question starting with any of these words. How, that's H, don't worry about it. What, when, where, who, and also why. All those words start with WH, and also the word how. Though it doesn't start with W, we consider it part of this group. So obviously you can guess why the others are called WH questions. They all start with W and H. So what, when, where, who, why, all those are used to ask a question, and the answer would not be just yes or no. The answer is probably going to be longer. So therefore, I can teach you that separately from the yes-no questions. And last week, it was quite some time ago, we did the yes-no question where I showed you, except for the be verb which can jump. Are you a teacher? Every other verb can do both, would have a do or does helping word coming. Do you teach at the University of Colombo? You would insert the do helping verb to make a yes-no question. Now the WH questions do not need a helping verb to make it a question. They can either they can be joined either to a yes-no inverted form. For example, if I say I am a teacher, are you a teacher? And if you want to know what I am, you can say what are you? You don't normally say that. You say what job do you do or something. But just to show you that the WH word can come to the inverted question form when you don't know the answer. For example, is he a student? That's the be verb jumping in front of the subject to make a yes-no question. And if you want to know, if you have no idea, is he a student, is when you have a rough idea of who that person is. When you don't have any idea, you would say, what is he? What is he, or who is he? Is he Nimal? Little bit sure that could be Nimal or may not be Nimal. But if you don't know at all, you can say, who is he? Okay, so WH questions are asked normally when you don't want to check some information, but when you want to completely ask for the complete information about somebody. Who is she? Is that Najila? Who is she? When you completely know that you don't know anything about that person, you can ask a WH question. Now, the WH questions, I said, can be joined to the inverted yes-no questions. For example, let me, do you teach first years? Do you teach first years? Right? So, you can't simply say, what do you teach? Because then it will come to another answer. So, don't worry about these rules so much. But you can put a whole phrase as a question. What years do you teach? What years do you teach? So the yes-no question was, do you teach first years? When you have an idea that she may be teaching the first years. But if I have no idea, I would say what with what I want to know. What years do you teach? Okay. What years do you teach? And you know, it can be a whole phrase that you put into a question. Rotten fruit are thrown away. If I'm a hotel owner, I can say rotten fruit are thrown away. Now, if you want to ask me what happens to the rotten fruit, you can say what happens to the rotten fruit. You can always use another word for which you are looking for the information with what and make it a full complete question. What happens to the rotten fruit? I throw them away. what happens. Okay, so happens is not, doesn't belong to the WH form, but the WH word can join into what you want to check. What years do you teach? What happens to rotten fruit? There's another thing you have to remember. Like, for example, if I say, he came yesterday, right? Or Raja came yesterday. Now, if you want to ask a yes-no question, you can obviously say, did Raja come yesterday? I taught you that form earlier. But if you don't know who came at all, Raja came yesterday, Raja is in the subject form. Raja is in the subject position. So if you are checking about the subject position, you can completely, without any inversion, using the complete sentence, just replace the subject which you don't know with who. For example, who came yesterday? You don't have to say who did come yesterday, right? Did Raja come yesterday? But if you don't know anything at all and the answer that you're seeking for would be in the subject position of the answer, you can just put the WH question where the subject is. Who came yesterday? Right? And I'll be doing a poem. I think I'll start with that, where the subject position is all what the questions are, and you'll see how beautifully it's so simple, it can be explained. This is a poem by Christina Rossetti. What is pink? A poem for kids, lot of fun though. So, and it explains very well how the subject position is simply replacing that subject with what. Can be what, who, anything. What is pink? Christina Rossetti. What is pink? A rose is pink by the fountain's brink. What is red? A poppy is red in its barley's bed. What is blue? The sky is blue, where the clouds float through. What is white? A swan is white, sailing in the light. What is yellow? Pears are yellow, rich and ripe and mellow. What is green? The grass is green, with small flowers between. What is violet? Clouds are violet in the summer twilight. What is orange? Why, an orange, just an orange. It's a baby poem. It's for children, but quite fun and very clearly demonstrates how the WH word can replace the word in the subject. What is pink? A rose is pink, without any inversion happening. And on the subject of Christina Rossetti, she's written another poem just like that in form, but this is not for kids. It's just 4 lines, but very, I find it very philosophic in what she says. Let me also read that same form, but the meaning is, I think, more deeper than the first one. The first one, what is orange? She's playing around with the fact that the fruit orange is also orange by color, and it is also called an orange. So it's a very unusual case of the color being the name of the fruit as well. She's playing around with that aspect. And I remember when I translated this, I was playing around with the word tambili, which the tambili fruit in Sinhala is also tambili. So we have a similar thing happening, but with a different fruit. Okay, so the second poem, again a question using the be verb. What are heavy? Christina Rossetti. What are heavy? Sea sand and sorrow. What are brief? Today and tomorrow. What are frail? Spring blossoms and youth. What are deep? The ocean and truth. Same form, but quite a different mood is created by this poem, where she asks 4 questions. What are heavy? And she gives a very practical answer. Sea sand. If you have wet sea sand, it's quite heavy in a bucket. And then she says sorrow. Now that's not a physical thing, but absolutely true. If you carry sadness, that can be one of the heaviest things that you carry mentally. And then what are brief? Short. What are short things? And she talks about time, something that we all forget. We forget how quickly time passes, right? And she says today and tomorrow. Today will finish very quickly, and we always think we have tomorrows, but tomorrow finishes very quickly too. So it's a case of remembering that these are very brief things. The way people live now, I think this is something we have all forgotten, that today and tomorrow are very brief. Then what are frail? Frail means weak, right? And then she again gives a practical answer. Spring blossoms. Flowers in spring. They are very weak because they don't live long. If you look at a flower, they have a very short lifespan. So spring blossoms, and the second one, and youth. Again philosophical in that sense. Youth, the time that you're young in body, maybe youth in the mind can last a bit longer, but these are short times. So connected to the second line, just like today and tomorrow are short, youth is also very short. Again, something that we might forget. And what are deep? A real answer, the ocean. The ocean is very deep. I mean, you can't even imagine how deep it is. And she says truth. Truth is very deep, because lies can be very shallow, but what is truth might be difficult to understand, but the truth is very deep. So I wanted to read those two together to show you how this poetess has used the same form, what is, given answers, but at two very different levels. One is for a children's poem, and one is probably for adults. And if you think about it, it has a lot of truth, close to what Buddhism also says about the frailty of life, the transience of life. So look at both of them. I'd leave you with another poem which uses the be verb again, a very well-known poem, Emily Dickinson's I'm Nobody, Who Are You? Because it shows the WH question but in the inverted form. Now, Christina Rossetti used it in the subject form. So what is heavy? Sea, sand and sorrow. Sea, sand and sorrow are heavy. That's the answer. Because she didn't know the subject, she said what are heavy? What are heavy? Sea, sand and sorrow. Here, I am nobody. Who are you? Now look at who are you. It's not who you are. Because I am nobody, the answer comes in the object position. I'm just discussing the form, not the strangeness of the words here. I am nobody. Nobody comes in the object position. So when you're questioning where the answer comes in the object, you put the WH word into the inverted yes, no position. Who are you? Not who you are. Who are you? So I am nobody. Who are you? Emily Dickinson. I am nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'd advertise, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog. To tell one's name, the livelong June, to an admiring bog. I hope to do this poem soon in a Dvibhashanaya program. So you'll hear the Sinhala version also. It's a very well-known, famous and beautiful poem where a woman who says, to be public, famous people, it's a horrible thing to be. You're like, like a frog, always having to tell, I am this, I am this, I am this, like a frog. And she says, I don't want to be anyone. I'm nobody. And mind you, this is one of the best poetess that lived. very philosophical. I have done her poems very much earlier in my the Sinhala English classes I did for my campus channel. So I won't explain this too much, except to show you the form. I am nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? That's a yes/no question. So then there's a pair of us. Don't tell, they'll advertise, you know. Please don't tell we are nobody, because that also they will tell and advertise. The second verse doesn't have a question form, more exclamation marks, more declarative sentences. How dreary to be somebody. How public like a frog. I'll explain it when I do my Sinhala one if this is difficult to understand. But admiring Bog, you can see how little she thought of the public that normally looks at famous people. Admiring Bog is like muddy waters, and the public speaker is like a frog. So she doesn't think much of celebrities or people who are famous or want to be famous. But the title, please note, has a be verb, which is an inversion, because the answer comes in the object position. So I'm going to, this is the first lesson on the WH question form. I'm doing another one next week with another poem to revise what I have done and use verbs which are not the be verbs also, not only the be verbs in the question form. For the moment, I will stop here. Thank you.